We live in a world defined by a strict physical reality. There are natural limits on the land, labor, and capital available to us. Yet human desire for the goods and services those resources create is entirely unlimited. Because we cannot have everything, we are forced to make choices. Society has to answer a basic question: how do we allocate these scarce resources? Who actually gets them? And exactly how much will they have to give up to do so? That is the domain of microeconomics. It is the study of how individuals and firms navigate this scarcity. Without a central planner dictating who gets what, buyers and sellers constantly negotiate with each other to allocate resources efficiently. Every time you buy a cup of coffee or a company orders raw materials, a tiny decision is recorded. Millions of these daily choices aggregate into a massive, mathematically predictable system. To understand how this system actually sets prices, we have to isolate the two main actors, starting with the buyer. This chart shows the demand curve, representing the quantity of a good that people are willing to buy at various prices. Notice that it slopes downward. This illustrates the inverse relationship between price and demand. As a product becomes more expensive, people naturally buy less of it because they have to forego spending their limited income on something else. Producers look at the market completely differently. The supply curve tracks the amount of a good that businesses are willing to manufacture. Its upward slope reflects a clear mathematical incentive. The higher the price a product commands, the more revenue producers make, motivating them to supply a greater quantity. These two opposing motivations collide at a perfect intersection known as equilibrium. At this exact coordinate, the quantity buyers want matches the quantity sellers produce. This determines the market clearing price, a stable state where no surplus stock builds up on shelves and no shortages occur. When a market is allowed to operate freely, the pricing mechanism always pulls back to this crossing point. It is the exact moment an agreement is successfully struck between human desire and corporate production capacity. In a textbook, this interaction of supply and demand moves proportionately. In reality, human behavior introduces strict mathematical friction. Some goods are essential for survival, while others are entirely optional. Economists measure this friction using the price elasticity of demand. This metric quantifies exactly how sensitive consumers are to a price change, showing whether a slight cost hike will lead to a minor dip in sales or a total collapse in consumer interest. Take a daily necessity like gasoline. Because commuters need fuel to get to work, they have very few immediate alternatives. Even if the cost per gallon spikes, overall consumption only drops slightly. The demand for fuel is highly inelastic. Conversely, high-end fashion and luxury goods face highly elastic demand. Because luxury watches are not strict necessities, even a subtle 5% price increase can easily drive shoppers to a competitor or convince them to delay their purchase entirely. These sensitivities also fluctuate over time. If consumer disposable income grows across the broader economy, or if an innovative new substitute hits the market, the entire demand curve can realign to the left or right, regardless of the product's actual price tag. By isolating the elasticity of a specific product, analysts can identify which companies hold the power to safely raise their prices and protect their profit margins without driving away their core customer base. If consumer behavior dictates the shape of demand, the internal calculus of the firm dictates supply. In economic models, business behavior boils down to a singular driving objective: maximizing profit. This chart illustrates the rule for finding that maximum profit. A business will manufacture units exactly up to the point where marginal revenue, the extra income generated by selling one additional unit, equals the marginal cost of producing it. As long as the revenue from a new unit is higher than the cost to make it, the firm increases its total return. That the moment production pushes past that exact intersection, the cost of making the next unit exceeds the cash it brings in, actively destroying the company's margins. This cost structure is heavily constrained by time. In the short run, a factory only has a fixed amount of machinery. If management continuously hires more workers to increase output, those workers eventually run out of equipment to use, leading directly to diminishing returns on labor and skyrocketing marginal costs. knowing exactly when to stop production is just as critical as knowing how to start. Mastering this delicate calculus is what separates firms that successfully scale their operations from those that collapse under the weight of their own inefficiency. When thousands of these profit-seeking entities collide in the real world, the structure of the arena they compete in determines how much pricing power they actually hold. At one extreme is perfect competition. Imagine an agricultural market where infinite farms sell the exact same commodity, like grain. No single farmer can influence the market, and there are zero barriers to entry. In this environment, businesses are simply price takers, forced to accept whatever equilibrium the broader market dictates. At the other extreme sits the monopoly or the oligopoly. Here, a single firm or a tight handful of highly interdependent companies dominate an industry. Massive capital requirements, patents, or strict regulations create high barriers to entry, actively blocking new competitors from participating. Freed from the pressures of infinite competitors, these dominant firms become price makers. By deliberately restricting their own supply, they can manually manipulate the market equilibrium, forcing consumers to pay a premium and securing supernormal profits. By mapping out elasticity, marginal costs, and competitive barriers, microeconomics functions as a predictive framework. It allows investors to strip away corporate marketing and isolate the mathematical machinery that drives the financial world.